Welcome to C-Suite Scale, where executive minds unpack the real stories behind business growth. Today I'm joined by Ryan Patrick, who is the VP of Adoption over at HITRUST. Hi Ryan, how are you?
Not too bad, Brenda. How you doing?
Doing fabulous. So excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, share with me a little bit about what you do over at HITRUST.
Yeah, so HITRUST is an organization that's been in business for just over 18 years, and we were founded to solve what I call the HIPAA problem, primarily from the HIPAA security rule perspective. When that was enacted in the early 2000s, it left healthcare organizations with more questions than answers on what the federal government wanted them to do to safeguard patient information and provide quality patient care. So our CEO and founder, plus of several other industry stakeholders, built their own framework that was much more prescriptive and helped answer the questions from a controls implementation perspective on what these organizations should do to comply with HIPAA, and it actually gave them actionable ways to do those things. And we've evolved from there. So we're primarily focused on cybersecurity generally, but AI as a special focus within the cybersecurity world, risk management, and really just helping organizations deal with the constant threat that really everybody is under today. So we're industry agnostic. We have a large footprint in healthcare, but the framework itself and the assessments are not specific for healthcare. They apply to any industry today.
Awesome, awesome. Talk to me a little bit about the expansion on going from just healthcare to expanding outward to everything.
Yeah, we took a really important step in the 2017-2018 timeframe where the framework up until that point would reference very HIPAA-like things. It would mention covered entities and business associates and payers and this and that. We removed all that language from the framework. And from that point, we started looking at how the controls that are protecting for any industry are being leveraged. And then we started to focus on those controls that actually matter regardless of industry segment, because what we found is the malicious actors out there, the bad guys and gals, they don't care really what industry you're in. Sure, they may have like slight tactic differences if you're financial services versus healthcare or manufacturing or what have you. But generally speaking, they're using the same vectors to get into organizations. You know, everything from phishing, social engineering, other types of human-based attacks, because arguably a lot of organizations have hardened their environments and it's a lot harder to get in from the outside. So they're trying to exploit the human factor. So that's really what we're focused on,
Yeah.
are the controls that matter based on today's threat intelligence.
Awesome, awesome. That's so great. And as far as in the market, what's your competitive differentiator?
We are really, really hard to achieve.
Love that. Love that. Talk to me about the path to get there and what that looks like.
Yeah, so I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but it's true.
Uh-huh.
We've built an assurance program. The way that our assessments need to be conducted is specifically outlined, and there are standards that the testing parties, we call them external assessors, you can think of them as CPA firms or other professional service firms that do consulting type work. They're the ones that actually go out and do the testing and provide the validation that the controls that are in scope for that assessment are actually in place, functioning, and scaled across the organization. So we have very rigid sampling criteria where it says, hey, if you have this endpoint detection and response capability on your endpoints, you need to show us that it's on all endpoints as opposed to, just one department. Whereas there's other standards out there, other frameworks where they're not as deliberate in the way that the assessments need to be conducted. So it leaves room for interpretation, it leaves room for error or omission or deliberate lack of focus, and it doesn't make the end result as comprehensive of an assessment. And I'll give you a very quick example. Everybody's familiar with a SOC2 type 2.
Right.
Almost everybody's got one, right? Well, the controls for a SOC 2 type 2 get to be decided by the organization that's going to be assessed. So, not to say that this happens across the board, but you can actually game the system. If you know you're not doing well from a certain security domain perspective, you can tell your auditor, I don't want you looking at these controls. And they won't look at those controls, but you're still going to get that SOC2 Type 2 report that says that you're doing all the things that were in scope of the assessment. You can also do something, well, we call carving out. So most organizations in this day and age are cloud native. They're either born in the cloud or they've moved to the cloud or they're hybrid cloud. Well, in the SOC 2 Type 2 world, you actually don't have to incorporate your cloud provider into the scope of the assessment. So when you think about, what AWS manages on your behalf versus what controls you manage within the AWS environment, you can either miss those or flat out ignore those for SOC 2, whereas with HITRUST, that's not the case. You have to include your cloud provider in the scope of the assessment. And we went one step further. We built a capability for the likes of AWS or Microsoft to get HITRUST certified themselves, and then they publish their assessment for inheritance. So all of the controls that they manage on your behalf automatically get pulled into your assessment, making it that much more complete picture. But it's less work and effort on your behalf because you don't have to go knocking on the door at Azure saying, pretty please, can I come in and test in your environment?
Right.
So when you couple all of that with the fact that on a monthly basis, we're consuming threat data and doing analysis based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework to determine what controls actually matter based on the threats that are happening today in the wild. Our controls are actually the most relevant controls because they're the ones that are actively being exploited. Whereas, if you look at 853, you may pull things into your assessment under NIST 853 that I don't want to say don't matter, but they're not protecting against the threats today. Whereas maybe MFA is really, really important and you didn't put that in scope of your assessment. So we do a lot of that homework right up front for our customers, which is a value add for them because many customers don't have the resources, the skills, or the expertise to do this type of work. So we're doing that on their behalf, and that's really what our differentiator is. It's the relevancy of our controls and the quality of the assessment because we review every single assessment. You can't get HITRUST certified unless your assessment is submitted to us, and we run quality assurance. And I guarantee if we had some of our external assessors on the podcast today, they would be like, oh yeah, HITRUST QA, it's no joke. It's somewhat painful at times because we're holding them to the standard in which we've said is in place.
I love that. That's very, gives a lot of confidence to your customers and clients that work with you. So
Yeah,
that's,
for sure. And we've seen organizations, primarily in the healthcare industry, because that's where we were born, who are now managing their vendors, so their third-party risk management program through the lens of HITRUST. So they're looking to get their vendors HITRUST certified because they've seen that, one, it's a proven risk reduction and risk mitigation tool, but it also standardizes the way that the controls are written, the way the reports are written. So when you're comparing 500, 1,000 vendors, if you're accepting anything under the sun, now you have to decipher, okay, this assessment here, is it looking at MFA? If it is, where and how is the testing done? Or if you're accepting a SOC 2, you have to do that homework, and it just slows everything down. It slows down the speed of innovation. It slows down the speed of business because now you can't onboard this vendor and what have you. So we're seeing more and more folks kind of gravitating towards HITRUST because of that standardization and the rigor.
that's great. And so, as the VP of Adoption, with such a strong product that you articulate so well, how are you going about getting this out to the market and basically communicating your message?
Yeah, that is our biggest challenge, candidly. So that's one of my primary roles is educating the market on all the things that we're doing. Indirectly, I learn from the market as I'm talking to it and feeding that back into the machine that we have from an innovation and standards perspective. I always joke that we keep these really big-brained people locked in a room just thinking about where HITRUST is going in the future. So I try to feed them, hey, market wants, desires, and needs. So that is now informing where we're going in the future. But yeah, education is our biggest obstacle. I mean, even in healthcare, there's organizations that truly don't know the rigor and the way that HITRUST assessments are conducted. And I'll give you some statistics. We have 3 assessments. Our most comprehensive and rigorous assessment, we call it the R2. In 2024, the average number of hours an external assessor, the folks doing the testing and validation, spent on an R2 was 476 hours.
Wow.
So when you think about, if you're a TPRM professional or cybersecurity professional doing some kind of due diligence on one of your vendors or business partners, you're likely not spending that amount of time with them. You'd be lucky if you spent 40 hours with them trying to understand what their security program looks like. So it really boils down to the fact that we're trying to pull work off the plates of these folks so they can get back to really hard risk management and cybersecurity principles, but also get back to just operating and being a business, because that's really what it boils down to.
Absolutely. And I think, specifically within cybersecurity, it's so hard to communicate effectively the messaging to the end user and get new clients on board because the product is just so complex. And so how are you going about simplifying this to your average company out there so they can kind of see what you offer?
Yeah, the way we've been doing it is we're doing a one-to-one, right? And what we're trying to figure out is how do we effectively do a one-to-many without diluting the message, right? Because it's super easy for me to do a podcast like this and I could bore you for hours on the way that our assessments are done. But people are always inherently going to have questions and they need points clarified. So that's the challenge with the one-to-many, but we're taking an approach, it's a hybrid approach, if you will. We're still doing our one-on-one conversations, but what we're trying to do is do the one-to-many and then take the one-to-one conversations out of that population, if that makes sense. And we're also arming other industry voices. There are folks in the GRC space, the cybersecurity space that have pretty large followings on things like LinkedIn. And the more that we can educate them, the more that they can educate their audience. Not to say that HITRUST is the end all be all. I mean, great, we would love for that to happen, but at least be able to articulate that HITRUST is something worthy of looking at and adopting because of reason X, Y, or Z. So we have a couple of different irons in the fire, so to speak, and just trying to educate the market.
A lot of that does just come down to trial and error, A/B testing, checking out how one message lands versus another. So I think that you're headed the right direction for sure.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Well, thank you for being so candid. You're dealing with a big task on your shoulders, and it's something that everybody in your role has to navigate through. As far as like overcoming the status quo and adapting to change out there, how are you navigating through that?
Yeah, I don't want to say a challenge, but something we wrestle with all the time, because if you look at, and I've already mentioned it, if you look at the SOC2, it is the king here in the US. Globally, it's ISO 27001 from a security perspective, but here in the US, it's the SOC2. And for years, we have fought uphill with concrete shoes on getting people to understand the difference between SOC2 and HITRUST as a comparison. In our favor, this sometimes you don't have to be good. Luck is a compelling factor. What we're seeing now is the market is starting to somewhat self-correct, and the SOC2 community, I'm talking about the auditors, the CPAs, the ones doing this work, are now starting to question themselves the value of SOC2, and they're talking about it publicly. And the folks that would rely on a SOC 2 are also seeing kind of the holes in it. So what we're trying to do is, I don't want to say fill the void, but we're we're trying to show people that there's another option, right? Because with SOC2, because everybody has it, it's the path of least resistance to onboard a vendor or do business with somebody else. But if it's not providing that value, then that's where the issue starts to creep in. So we're trying to show them, hey, there's another option out there that actually will go above and beyond what SOC2 will do for you because of, the cyber threat intelligence work we're doing, or the fact that you can consume high trust results in a structured data format, so you don't have to consume thousands of PDFs from your vendors. You can get a JSON data stream into your GRC tool or your TPRM tool, and then you can do your analysis in an automated fashion. So there's lots of compelling reasons that high trust is a suitable alternative to kind of the status quo today, which is SOC 2.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of market disruption. Are you getting a lot of referrals from the people that are currently using your services?
Yes. A lot of times, the people who pursue high trust fall into just a handful of buckets. Mm-hmm. One, they've been asked to by one of their customers, the folks that I alluded to earlier that rely on high trust to manage vendors. But two, there's folks out there that want to do the right thing from a cybersecurity perspective. Now, granted, it's going to sound terrible, but they're few and far between because people are just focused on generating revenue and not so much on cybersecurity. But we're seeing more and more of those types of customers come into the fold where they knew that for the longest time they should have been doing high trust because it actually is a forcing function to improve your security program, but they didn't have the justification, or they were relying on something else like SOC 2, and I think they're now starting to gravitate towards us. But we're also seeing, as I mentioned, some of our external assessors who do SOC 2 work, they're now starting to talk to their customers and be like, listen, with the current threat landscape, you probably need to be doing more, and SOC 2 is not going to protect you. You should be pursuing things like high trust because they have a less than 1% breach rate, which I haven't mentioned yet, right? I mean, so we're seeing momentum build, and we're trying to foster that momentum as much as we can, right? Provide additional education to those CPA firms that feel this way, whether it be get on the phone with their customers and they can hear directly from the horse's mouth of things that high trust is doing. We're trying to capitalize on the momentum that's kind of happening naturally in the market.
I love that. Well, let's talk about AI for a moment. It's a fun topic. So what kind of current challenges are you seeing, particularly with the adoption of AI going on?
Oh, man. I could talk forever on this one too. So there's a couple things. One of the major obstacles, I think, is that people don't realize how much AI they're consuming today. Like, I saw a McKinsey survey that said, don't quote me on the exact percentage, but it's directionally accurate. 78% of organizations globally have adopted AI in some form or fashion. And that's probably just the people who have gone out and purchased some kind of tool with AI. What they're not considering is, if you're a Microsoft shop and you have Teams, you've got Copilot, that's AI. If you're, you've got probably Gemini, your employees have got ChatGPT. There's all sorts of tools that are just built into the foundation of tools that you're already using. So that 78% starts to creep a bunch higher. And I don't think people realize that, but the people that do, and this is the second challenge, they're completely overthinking it. It is this elephant in the room that they're just looking at how big it is, and they're like, how the heck am I going to eat this elephant? And what I've been trying to tell people is just eat it one bite at a time, right? Don't try to boil the ocean here. Utilize your existing policies and processes to start to manage AI in your environment, right? So when you're talking to your vendors about their inherent security exposure or the risk they present to you, just start asking them about AI as well. And then you'll uncover the fact that, they have this AI, but they don't manage it, so I need to go to the entity that manages that AI, and try to ascertain what's going on, so on and so forth. Like, just start moving, because if you just sit in analysis paralysis, then you're going to find yourself 2 to 3 years from now way behind the power curve. And I keep telling folks, we're like one AI breach away from people really starting to focus on AI security, because I personally think it's getting lip service at this point. But it's coming, and it's only going to continue to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about third-party risk management, particularly in that AI landscape?
Yeah, I think it's right in line with, just leverage the things that you have.
Hmm.
You know, I have yet to come across a mature organization. Startups are a little bit different, but an SMB, obviously enterprise types of organizations, they have some program in place. So you don't need to stand up an entire new entity or unit department in your organization to start managing AI risk. Just leverage the existing TPRM team that you have,
Hmm.
and leverage things, you know, biased Ryan HITRUST guy here, leverage things like HITRUST to demonstrate, where vulnerabilities may reside or where risk may be present within these vendors. Don't try to recreate the wheel. Don't stand up a chief AI officer that is completely separate from the CISO, that's completely separate from the CTO, and is not even talking to the TPRM team. Like, it needs to be all nested. It needs to be very collaborative, because TPRM is probably the hardest thing to wrap your arms around inside an organization, because there's so many stakeholders
Hmm.
for a single vendor. If you think about, you've got the procurement person who's trying to just get them through the procurement process. You've got the TPRM manager that's trying to manage all the vendors. You've got the CISO who's just trying to understand risk. You've probably got the CFO who's trying to understand, how much is this going to cost me? Maybe legal counsel based on how the contracts are written. And probably most importantly, you've got a business owner who wants to bring that vendor in. And when
Hmm.
the business owner says, I need this vendor or I can't generate revenue, that usually wins when
Hmm.
there's a debate on whether a vendor should come on board. So
Right.
that's why I really encourage folks to, embed whatever you're doing from an AI security perspective into the existing security program that you have today, because it needs to be nested, because they're so tied together.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And your company can help even elevate that.
For sure. So I mentioned we have 3 security assessments today. You can think of those as high, medium, low, or small, medium, large from a risk perspective. The level of effort is directly connected to the amount of controls and the risk that's presented to the organization. But
Hmm.
we, as of December of 2024, deployed an AI security certification after a 15-month working group where we brought the likes of Microsoft, AWS, Johnson and Johnson, Databricks, and others to formulate what this AI security assessment should look like.
Hmm.
Then we took all the output of that, we put it out to public comments. We got lots of comments from across the globe on, hey, this makes a lot of sense, or you guys forgot something here, and we took that feedback and we, massaged it a little bit more. So we feel really confident that the controls that are in the scope of our assessment are the controls that matter based on AI security today. We're committed to constantly evolving and making changes to, hopefully stay ahead of the threat landscape.
Hmm.
But there is no other AI security assessment, pure security assessment available today. Some people are pursuing things like ISO 42001, but
Hmm.
ISO 42001 one covers all domains of responsible AI, everything from environmental to reputational to financial. Security is involved there,
Hmm.
but it also is really high level. It's focused on risk management and not, really technical security controls. And that's where we complement 42001 really well, but we also differentiate ourselves to a certain extent, as we're looking at how do I configure this system to make sure that it's going to operate the way that I want it to operate?
Perfect. I love that. What makes you excited about the rest of 2025 and even going into 2026?
Well, I think I guess excited is a relative term. We put out so many new things in 2024 that we don't have a lot that we're going to put out this year. But what we're looking at moving forward is a couple of different things. Like we feel that any assurance mechanism, to a certain extent, high trust included, is very point in time, right? This is how the controls were operating when they were tested on that day. We're moving to a model of continuous assurance. Think of it very similar to continuous monitoring that a lot of organizations or a lot of standards are adopting. We're looking to build the ability for testing to happen continuously over time. So you're constantly kind of doing a sample check on whether the controls are operating effectively. And that does a couple of things. One, it provides a higher level of confidence and trust and assurance that when someone says they're high trust certified, it wasn't just during a 90-day window. It's been happening throughout the entire year. But it also, in theory, should make the effort less arduous. And it, in theory, could lower costs because people can do things more deliberately. Whereas right now, all of our testing needs to be done within 90 days. And that's an absolute sprint based on the size of the assessment. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited to see where continuous assurance goes. We've also built an app that's available in the ServiceNow App Store, Marketplace. I'm not sure the exact term they use,
Yeah.
where
Service.
it integrates into the ServiceNow TPRM module. So as you're managing your vendors via ServiceNow, you can actually request high trust results through this app that we built, and then you can consume those results through the app, and then it populates obviously into ServiceNow in that structured data format. So the days of PDFs, in my mind, are limited, right? Or their days are numbered, as I guess the right way to say it. So that's pretty exciting because automation is necessary for trust in TPRM to be successful, because right now it's so laborious and so manual. So I think that's pretty exciting and what we're looking to do in the future.
I'm definitely excited for you, and that's a big accomplishment. I mean, to get that integrated into ServiceNow, so you should definitely be proud of what you've done so far.
Yeah, yep. It took us a little while, but it worked out. So
Good deal, good deal. Well, how can people reach out to you if they'd like to learn more about you or High Trust?
yeah, so you can find me. I'm all over our website. Lots of videos, lots of content that I've written. You in that website is hightrustalliance.net. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn every single day. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me there. If on our website, you'll see all of the different webinars and speaking events that I'm doing. But worst case, you can email me directly, ryan.patrick@hightrustalliance.net. I am a resource for you all to take advantage. If I can't answer the question, I will find the really big brain person who's locked in a room to get you the exact answer to your question. So, and whether you want to call me up and just tell me, hey, I just like high trust for all these reasons, I'm willing to listen to that too, because that'll help shape, where we go in the future. So open to any all comment or feedback.
That's lovely. Well, he is surely committed, audience. So I would definitely take advantage of this and as an opportunity just to level up your own security process. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for being on the show today. Your insights were super valuable. And I guess we'll close things up. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much, Brenda.
Thank you.